Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Natural Fertility with Dr. Jane. Of course, I'm Dr. Jane, and today I am joined by Dr. Marc Sklar, who has over 20 years of experience in the fertility space. I'm super excited to connect with you today, Marc.
I'm excited to connect with you. I think this is going to be a fun conversation, and I think we've got a lot to talk about.
Yes, we do. Well, I've interviewed a couple of docs now who have been in the space for over 20 years. I myself am coming up to 10 years, 6 in the fertility space. And I'm always curious to hear, what are you seeing now that you didn't see 20 years ago? What has changed in the functional fertility space in the last 20 years, or even conventional side?
Yeah, well, so much has changed. I will say one of the biggest things I've seen is that when I started practicing, there were 3 IVF clinics in San Diego, and now there's, I think, 15. That alone is a huge change, which tells you how big the space is and how much the marketing effort to have roughly 15 IVF clinics in a moderate-sized city. San Diego is not huge to provide, I'm going to say IVF services because that's specifically what they do. I think that's significant. There's a lot to be gleaned by that, I think, both on the positive and negative. On the positive is that fertility has become something that's more easily talked about. We're seeing it much more in the news. Couples are more likely to talk with their friends about it or family members and reach out for support more. So the fact that it's more widespread and available, I think is a wonderful thing. On the flip side, on the negative, the fact that that's happened, the IVF community has kind of taken a little bit of a advantage of that situation, I think, and really tried to promote their services as the first line of therapy or treatment. And that to me is frustrating. 50% of the couples we support are going through IVF, so I have nothing against IVF and that fertility world, and happy to support couples wherever they are and meet them where they are. My frustration is that IVF is not intended to be a first-line therapy. It's not really intended to be or shouldn't be a first-line treatment because it's not really solving or fixing problems. It's bypassing them to achieve a pregnancy. And so I think that for me is more of a negative and something I would just caution couples on. And so that's something that I've definitely seen change. On the flip side, I think it's amazing the advancements in technology that we have today, and we're going to see it, I think, just profoundly increase with just AI and technology coming up. We're just seeing so much advancement. There's so many more resources for testing to find answers that we couldn't have found or didn't even know how to look for them 20 plus years ago, that now, those are resources we have available to us. That's one of the things that I'm most excited about, having the tools, the testing, the labs that are doing some of the things that I wish we had years ago, but are really giving couples a lot of information and a lot of resources on how to move forward, address some of the root cause issues that are at hand that they may not have been able to do in the past. So I think that's really exciting and something that I'm thrilled to see. And then with couples coming in, I've seen a big difference with couples coming in recently in terms of them being more aware on the male side of things. I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I've seen shift. 20 years ago, men were barely part of the conversation, barely did any testing. Now they're coming to appointments with them, now with their partners. Now they're much more involved and willing to make changes, and all of that to me is just a wonderful thing to see change.
It's funny you talked about the fertility clinics, and I think the misconception is that fertility clinics are something different than what they actually are.
Right.
And so they are IVF clinics, in my opinion, and maybe that will change soon. And I'd love to see this integrative approach where absolutely there's a time and place for IVF, and it's a beautiful way to grow a family. But as a first-line treatment, are you guys out of your mind? That was one of the reasons I got into the fertility space, because my sister was 37 when she was ready to start trying to have kids. They said, try for 6 months. If nothing happens, just come in and do IVF. And back then I wasn't specializing in fertility then, and I was just like, what? You guys are not going to test? You're not going to look at the fact that she was on birth control for 15 years, or that she hasn't been sleeping properly, or that she's, like malnourished? All of these basic things. Her vitamin D levels are so chronically low, you're just going to push her through IVF. And so, of course, I think that there are some clinics that are really great and do look at diagnostics to help understand why the root cause, why the couple is not getting pregnant, versus most clinics are just running diagnostics to see, will IVF work? Yes, great. You'll go this way. No, well, let's try it anyways.
I agree with you, and there's a handful of clinics that will do much more of a deep dive, but I agree. If we're lucky, IVF clinics or fertility clinics will change in the future. But right now, that's pretty much what they do.
Tell me, what kind of diagnostics are you running with your patients that are helping you understand why the couple is struggling to conceive, and like what are some of the main reasons that you're seeing?
For me, one of the most amazing things that continually is surprising to me from the past to now is this continuity of lack of testing, right?
Yes.
You know, um, we only needed the bare information, the bare amount of labs done. So when someone's coming to me, I really want as much information as possible. So like my just like
Yeah.
baseline comprehensive blood panel is very comprehensive, full thyroid panels, all the hormones, all of those sorts of things. Quite frankly, often we find a lot of things there that they just didn't even know were going on.
To look
No
for.
one's ever looked. I do love to incorporate, and where appropriate, but often it's one of the first things that I'm adding in is stool testing, gut testing. For me, digestive support is essential and needs to be a first line therapy when we're dealing with probably all health issues, but fertility hormones number one. And so often finding a lot of imbalance. They're just not able to metabolize their food properly. They're not getting the nutrients out of their food and digestion. Those are things that I spend quite a bit of time at the beginning supporting couples with. They're often scratching their head, like wondering, I came to you for fertility. Why are we doing all of these things? But once they start to feel different and see changes, they understand it a
Mhm.
little bit more and feel more confident with it. Doing a lot more microbiome, sticking with like the GI, but like a lot more microbiome testing and vaginal and uterine microbiome, which is for me beautiful. We just didn't have those resources 25 years
Mhm.
ago, so
Yeah.
that's wonderful.
I just started running seminal microbiome as well.
Yes, me
And
too.
I love that. It's been amazing to see, because sometimes I'm like, well, we'll just treat the woman and we'll look at what the vaginal microbiome is. And then it's like her infection isn't moving. And it's things that you could find in the seminal microbiome. So whether that's staph or the
Right.
enterococcus, and you're like, let's look, because we're essentially trying to treat her and him at the same time. But when you can see the full picture and understand what else is going on for him, then you can really shift him, and then she can finally shift as well and clear whatever it is that's been hanging around there for a long time, you know?
Yeah, I agree. That's something that routinely I've been adding in more and more as well. And certainly when I start to see male factor issues, that's something that I want to add in addition to it. So it's been a great combination. Hopefully we'll have more resources for that sort of testing in the future. That's been excellent.
Have you noticed the difference in terms of the complexity of issues that are coming up, or the age that couples are coming to, whether younger or older? Have you noticed the trend or a shift there at all?
For me, it goes through waves. So I haven't seen as much of a trend there. There'll be times where I'm just seeing a lot more couples who are over 40 and then couples who are in their late 20s, but not necessarily a trend so much there. But I do find that they're much more informed now than they ever were with all the
Yes. Thanks to
information.
podcasts like
Yes,
this.
I was just about to say, with podcasts like this, with all the resources that are available today, they're much more informed, and they come with a lot of information, a lot of questions, and that makes it helpful for me. I just had someone who I was communicating with, and she had done all this testing before communicating with me, and I was like, "Well, this just gives you a head start. This is great. It gives us our results should be faster as a result of it."
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's the gift and the curse, because I've spent a lot of time educating about
Yeah.
labs ever since I got into the space. You got to test, you have to understand what's going on. The gut is so fundamental. And I think it's so fragmented to think that the gut is separate from the reproductive system. Because when I think about pregnancy, it's not just the uterus that's growing the baby, it's your entire system that's growing the
Yeah,
baby, and that gets
absolutely.
stress put on it. So of course we want to assess the whole system, so then we can see where issues might happen, and obviously why the pregnancy is not even happening. Like what I'm seeing now is a bunch of people are coming to me and they're having so many tests done.
Right.
And then I'm like, who interpreted these for you? How did you do it? And they're like, well, no, but I just got it on the internet.
Right.
ChatGPT interpreted it for me. And you're
Yeah.
like, oh my God, run the test, but run it with a qualified practitioner. When we are saying in our practices, the test is only as good as the interpreter. So if the interpreter is not that good, whether that's ChatGPT or another practitioner, you're not going to get that much information out of the test.
100%. So yeah, I agree with you. Sometimes it's a bit much and overwhelming that they come in with all of that, especially when I'll often ask, so you got these results, did you do anything about them? Well, no one told me to do anything about them. Like, okay,
Why did you run the
and what
test?
good was that? You spent a lot of money. What good was it?
The other question I have for you is around male fertility.
Hmm.
And I think that there's a lot of testing and kind of the involvement of the male partner. I have been running a lot more DNA fragmentation tests. I think that's something that should be standard for men if they're doing IVF, because we can see, not that we can predict exactly what's going to happen, but we have a much better pool of data, if you will. What's your experience with the DNA fragmentation test? And I know that there are some that are coming out with double-stranded versus single-stranded DNA, and I have been a little bit almost confused of why run the single-stranded, because the double-stranded is what we want. I'm curious to see if you have any experience there and just your thoughts on some of the advanced testing that we're getting
Yeah.
for the sperm analysis.
One, for those men out there, I'm hoping your community and your followers have already done all their semen analysis. But if you haven't, you're always expecting your partner to do all of this testing for herself. I always love to see when someone comes to me that we have both sides taken care of on the testing side, and a full semen analysis is essential and important. But it doesn't give us the full picture. I've been probably using DNA fragmentation in some variation for close to 15 years, but certainly in the last 10 years, much more. And I don't want to say it's become a routine part of my workup for men, but it's become much more routine for men than it was in the past, and essential for me. And one of the biggest things that I will say when it comes to testing DNA fragmentation is I get a lot of couples in general who will say, well, we did the semen analysis and everything came back fine, so why do we need to do a DNA fragmentation? A DNA fragmentation is, you can't get this information on a standard analysis. And maybe the closest thing is morphology, but really it's looking inside at the sperm, and you're really understanding the quality of the sperm. And just like the name says, it's how fragmented is the DNA of the sperm, and that's really what we're looking for. And so we want that number to be as low as possible. The higher it is, the more of a problem it is for couples and for male factor. I find that one of the biggest things that I see, if we do see that higher number, is that it can lead to implantation issues and lead to recurrent miscarriage. So DNA fragmentation is something that I have done routinely for most of our couples in current time. Really find that men are much more open to it today than they were before. And one of the most amazing things that I have seen is just the ability to track that progress for everybody. Being able to see that, okay, this is what it was before, I'm gonna make all these changes, and then see that progress afterwards.
3 months later, you're going to see a completely different sperm analysis.
Yeah, so I ask everyone to not retest until about 100 days. But yeah, it's like, one of my favorite stories, by the way, and it wasn't around DNA fragmentation, but it's one of my favorite male factor stories, is about 18-ish, maybe 20 years ago, I was collaborating with an IVF clinic very closely, and I knew the embryologist well, and we would always coordinate and communicate on patients. And so then one day, he reached out to me because there was a man we were both supporting, and he thought that the lab test, he thought his sample was wrong. He got it mixed up with somebody else. His first sample 6 months prior was terrible, and they kept checking, and it was awful. And then just this random sample that he had in December, everything was over 100 times better than where it was before. So he called me, and he was like, what's the difference? We ended up calling the patient and having the conversation. He goes, well, it was the holidays, and up until this point, I travel a lot. I'm always on the go. I'm working a lot, not getting a lot of sleep. And because of the holidays, I decided I was going to take some time off. And so I've been getting better sleep, and I've been eating much better, and I'm not traveling. And that was the difference. That was the thing that he did. All these lifestyle variables. So amazing that the embryologist thought it was somebody else's sperm, okay? So it tells us, for all the men listening, it really tells us like how impactful those things that you can do on your own at home now, how significant they are. It might seem small or incidental. Let me get more sleep, let me exercise, let me reduce my stress and so forth. But all of that is impactful, and on a DNA fragmentation test, you're going to see that shift dramatically. We didn't do a DNA fragmentation test on him at that time, but I wish I did, because I'm sure it would have been significant.
Yeah, it's one of the coolest things to watch tests go from, and that's any test, to you have insane inflammation, this is cardiovascular disease, this is metabolic disease, this is really poor quality sperm, to here we go, you're actually have reversed the disease, all the disease risk factors. And then obviously that is a reflection in the sperm. And I always say the healthier that the male is, then the healthier the sperm is. And that's why I hate when they just look at the sperm and then they say everything is fine, because we know those ranges, those reference ranges that are set by the World Health Organization are really just thresholds for IVF, not for optimal conception.
Correct. And for me, I wish that a semen analysis was a standard workup, as part of a standard workup for most men if they go in for a regular evaluation annually. I wish it was part of it for that very reason. Now, you did bring up the single-stranded, double-stranded DNA fragmentation testing. So that's new, right? That double-stranded is new that we're seeing now, which is amazing. I do think in the next year or two, we're just going to see a shift completely over to that and away from the single strand. I can't tell you why some are still using it, why some companies are still using that. But I do think it's going to be a total shift away. And I remember the first time I got one of those results, I was like, wow, where did this come from? This is going to change things, hopefully change things for the better for us. So with all new tests and new technologies, I think that's something that's just going to evolve over time, and hopefully it continues to be there. What I will tell you is I haven't seen a significant difference in the way we need to support men as a result of that information. So it's nice to have it, but from a clinical perspective, it hasn't changed anything that we would do. I think it does worry men a little bit more to see that. If the double-stranded is a significant fragmentation, I think they're more concerned as a result of that. So I do see that that's brought up more stress. So that might be on the negative side. Do we really need to do that? But we'll see. And maybe we find that there's really no significant difference in the future. We'll probably know that in like 3 to 5 years, and then they'll just stick to one.
I do think that the clinical experience here goes a long way, because if you're just looking at one test and you're only looking at the test to make your decision, then you probably are going to miss something. So even, for example, a stool analysis, I don't know if you've ever had that, but you get the stool analysis and you're like, I don't know if that captured everything. I don't know if I believe that this is what's going on, because things just looked like they were maybe quiet at this time. And so sometimes it is important to potentially retest, but also just look at other markers, because if I see a male or a female that has a lot of inflammation, their hormones are out of balance, their nutrients are all depleted, and then I look at the gut and it's like, oh, the gut looks perfect. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I buy that. And then you can call the lab company and say, I just don't think they got this test. Or if I see a test and the same infection is popping up for everybody, I'm going to question that. So I think that's really important for us as clinicians to interpret those results for a patient, not with just one marker, the whole picture. Plus, like, what is the person presenting with? Again, when I see a male that has metabolic disease, cardiovascular disease, and it's like, oh, DNA fragmentation is perfect. I'm like, I don't know if I believe that, like, let's do another sample. And if it is, then I'll shut up, but.
Right. Yeah, I do not have a problem running the same test multiple times when I question what's going on, reaching out to the lab in situations like that. Sometimes it can be tricky trying to get the couple to buy into, I'm not 100% convinced, can we redo it? That sometimes can be a little bit challenging to make happen.
For sure.
But I do want to double check. And on the flip side, I will also say when something comes back negative, want to retest again, just to confirm that what we saw was was accurate, but maybe that was a fluke and, it was a one-time thing. What we all have to remember, couples included, is all these tests that we're running, these are snapshots. So many variables go into that specific snapshot. Was that a good day, a bad day?
How did you sleep?
Period?
What did you eat? What level of stress
all
you
of
were
those
under?
things.
All of it.
Yeah. So we do have to keep those things in mind as we're looking at that. But if a test comes back all normal, but the person in front of me, it's just something still feels off, I have to question those results, right? And that's just what a human would do versus, let's just say, plugging all that information into AI and asking it to say, what does this mean? Oh, everything looks great. Keep trying. Yeah.
I saw a really great meme on a reel on Instagram, and she was a personal trainer, and she's like, how AI would train you versus how I would train you. And she was just role playing her client being like, oh, this is too heavy. I think I should stop. And the AI goes, yes, you're totally right. You're probably pushing yourself. Have a rest. And then it's like, how I would train you. That's what it's supposed to feel like.
Right.
Pick up the weights and keep going. I just had a good laugh because I'm like, there's so many times where my patients are worried about this reaction that they're having, and they're like, oh my God, should I stop these supplements? I'm actually pooping a lot more, or this rash came out of nowhere. And I'm like, no, actually, that means your body is purging, and we need to support that. We don't want to overwhelm the body. And I have guardrails, in terms of the reaction that I want to see from them. But I'm not going to stop a protocol that actually tells me we're moving in the right direction. That's clinical experience. And don't get me wrong, I have loved certain aspects of AI and how helpful it's been, but there's stuff where I'm like, you're not going to be able to replace this.
Correct.
It's silly to try.
Correct.
You can make quite a mess if you do.
Yeah, I agree. And your comment about when a client or a patient starts seeing change, it might not be ideal for them. My rule of thumb with most situations is that I want to see change. I want to see the body responding to what we're doing.
Yes.
I don't want anyone to be in discomfort for any extended period of time or have adverse effects for any extended period of time. But that tells me, one, we're seeing change. You're doing something, we're making a difference, the body's adjusting. Now we need to give it that time to normalize and see what happens on the other side.
Change is uncomfortable. I spent a lot of years personal training, and I coached gymnastics. And if I kept my clients in the comfort zone, they would never see any results. And so I'd have to take them out of the comfort zone where the muscles are burning, they feel like they're going to fail, to then get them to that other side. And I think that there's truth to that in the health space, but to play devil's advocate, you also don't want to push the client so much that they break, right? Just like in training, if you push the system too much, you can tear a muscle, you can sprain your ankle, you can get hurt and injured. So you want to just put guardrails in terms of the level of discomfort you're okay with feeling, but we need discomfort because that's essentially growth. And like you said, we are looking for change. And you can't, change and comfort don't go in the same sentence, I don't think.
No, all of that with balance. We're just trying to manage those situations, everything in moderation and balance. And for each individual, that will look different, right? Well, someone who's very sensitive or their constitution is different than the next couple, you're going to approach those shifts differently from one couple to the next because they're all unique, they're all individuals, and their circumstances are different.
Tell me, what are some new things that you think, how has your practice evolved in terms of, and maybe what hasn't evolved and what has stayed the same in terms of the actual treatment and the therapies that you are doing for clients struggling with fertility?
That's a great question. Supplements have changed. What we know about the nutrients, what's available to us, how we've been able to do the research and combine. So supplements to me has evolved over time. But some of the key things, but some of the key things are still key things that have been used 20 plus years, and we're just going to continue to do them. So that's not necessary. There's a balance. There's some tried and true, and then, we've got some advancements in supplementation and learning new things about antioxidants and peptides and how we're going to incorporate these into a protocol and what's appropriate. So on the supplement side, that's always something to keep up with and evolve with, and then manage and how you're going to put that in. I'm sure the same thing is true for you as it is for me. How much is too much? How much is too little? Where's that balance of, this feels like a good amount of supplements for what they need, and how we're going to approach that. I would say one of the biggest things that's evolved over time is my approach to it all. In the beginning, I may have just said, just going to start with one thing, or I may have decided to do the kitchen sink at somebody, whereas now I'm doing things in phases and layering it.
Yes.
Really just trying to prioritize what I think is the most important first and address that, feel good and comfortable, and then shift to that next layer and so forth. Sometimes it takes a little bit more time, but I think in the long run, that's the best approach, and it's managed best by everybody. And then just new technologies, lasers and red light therapy and hyperbaric chamber and ozone and IV and we could go on, right? We have all of these things available to us now. It's amazing that we do. It affords us a lot of flexibility and options in care, but then it's still the same thing. It's about the practitioner's experience and knowledge to understand how we're going to weave all of that together. What do you prioritize? This is okay for this person, but not for this person, and just balancing out. And that's really the years of experience and practice that goes into it for me, and learning the individual in front of you and understanding where are they at, what do they need right now. One of the things I'm relying on a lot more, the things that couples can do at home and take ownership of.
Yes, for sure.
Not all about a fancy technology or all about a new supplement. What are you going to do on the basics? And can you put those things in? Because we're always looking as a culture, looking for that quick fix. Where's the one pill I can take or one thing I can do? And I just don't find that fertility is like that. And so can I get couples to lean into the things that they need to be doing at home on their own? Yes. Diet, sleep, exercise. But I'm going to call it meditation, but I don't always refer to it as meditation because I don't think we need to sit here with our legs crossed and for an hour. But really just being more mindful, more conscious, and creating space for ourselves in a day to just be, if that's 2 minutes or 5 minutes or 10 minutes of just breathing and disconnection. I have found that to be really, really valuable for couples, and something I'm really trying to lean into for them.
For sure. Nervous system regulation, I think, is kind of the bucket that's under, and I've had women where I've literally was like, hey, I just need you to lay on the floor 2 minutes a day. Nothing. Just do nothing for 2 minutes. That's it. Because for somebody who's go, 2 minutes is a long time. You're just your mind is racing, you're bored, you're all these to-do lists, and essentially just creating that place of safety for the body. I definitely think the supplements have changed a lot in the kitchen sink approach. God knows I used to do it as well. And that comes from a place of we just want to help. I think when I give a kitchen sink, I just want this person to feel amazing. So I'm going to give them everything. I definitely have clients who are still doing that when they come. And the expertise is to be able to see what does this person actually need and what is this phase that we're in that we need to work through. So if there's a gut infection, you're not going to be maximizing nutrients because you got to get rid of the infection. So then you can actually, everything that you're taking is going to be absorbed. And then the quality of the supplements, there's some that are getting much better, some brands that used to be well trusted that are not. I don't know if you're facing that as well, but I find I'm constantly juggling and I always experiment things on myself. And even this glutathione that I'm taking right now is I don't know, I'm not feeling it anymore. I'm not sure if they changed something in their production line or something shifted, but all of a sudden I'm not getting the same results. So here I am looking for a new glutathione.
That's funny because someone just brought up last week glutathione to me. So it's funny you mention it.
Yeah. And you said peptides. What are you doing with peptides? I think this is a hot topic and I have dabbled very little into it. But I do feel like it's quite experimental still. So I'm kind of just sticking to the things that I know are working, experimenting a little bit, but not using that as my front line of treatment.
It's for sure not my front line of treatment. It's not where I start with most. Really,
some basics.
And really just trying to keep it simple. I think the more complicated that I see couples doing it with or using it, the less I find it to be effective. And so really just trying to keep it very simple and straightforward and just playing a little bit with it here and there. But I'm getting a lot more questions from couples about peptides because they're hearing on podcasts, they're researching it or whatever it might be. And so then they're like, oh, should I be using peptides? And peptides all sound great, but you can make every supplement sound amazing, right? Or every product sound amazing. It doesn't mean we need all of them.
Yep.
And so, I would just caution everyone, start simple, maybe 1 or 2 items. Things that make sense for me is where I'm leaning into for them, and I'm always looking at things that can restore better ovarian function and testicular function. So that's how I make my decisions when it comes to that. It's like, oh, is this really going to be helpful in that, or are you just using it because it sounds good, or you're asking about it because you just want a little extra? There's lots of extra things we can add in. Doesn't mean that we need to, or that it's...
There's lots of extra.
Yeah.
Obviously it is the biohacking community, and I do also think that it's a long-term game. And so most couples are not long-term game when they're coming to fertility. They're trying to speed that up. And so absolutely peptides can help. And I think that's just my limit, my knowledge limit in that space. And then also knowing that it's experimental and weighing those things out versus like, I know these things work and this is what I need to treat. And this is, and then we can go into all the anti-aging things, because there's also things like PRP. And I don't know if you've gotten into PRP and you're doing that on a regular basis.
I will mention, whether we're talking about PRP or peptides, 2 totally different things, but in the same vein, everything has a cost-benefit analysis.
Yes.
Peptides are not inexpensive. PRP is not inexpensive. So as we're making these decisions...
Supplements are not inexpensive.
Right.
Yeah.
We've got to just look at all of that and decide, like, do I feel like I'm doing enough with what I'm doing, or do I really need to add something in? And then looking at the cost and saying, is that worth it to me to do? Because, peptides is a long-term thing. You're probably not doing it once, you're doing it for a while to see the change. PRP is a little bit different. So I like PRP. I am particular about the kind of PRP, for lack of a better word. If we're just doing what I've seen very little change in ovarian function is with standard PRP treatments that you can get more easily, more commonly in most clinics that are doing it. They're doing this just like basic PRP. The ones that I have found to be much more effective and that I'm actually seeing a significant change are those who are doing adipose tissue PRP, and there's not a lot of that being done. So they take the adipose tissue and use that for their platelet-rich plasma, and I'm seeing I only know of 1, maybe 2 clinics in the U.S. that are doing it, and I am seeing significant change there for couples, noticeable. Also, stem cell, which we can't do in the States, but those who have been doing it, where it's been appropriate and necessary, I've seen positive changes from that as well. I used to feel much more positive about this, just like standard basic PRP, which is relatively inexpensive in the grand scheme of things. I'm not so high on it anymore because I'm just not seeing the results that I used to see.
I think with any of those therapies, I always say, like, you have to get the basics right. So if I have somebody who has blood sugar dysregulation, they have a lot of excess weight, they have a bunch of infections, even like those patients with endometriosis, or even like post-COVID and long COVID symptoms, I'm so cautious of like, okay, let's spread this disease all over the ovaries as well. And then you have to have some kind of nutrients in the blood to actually have it work, and making sure that the blood flow is there. So the preparation for the therapy, I think, becomes just as important. And that's maybe why we're seeing the decline in the regular PRP, is because anybody's just jumping in and being sold as this miracle, where in reality, it's just like IVF. The eggs are being pulled from your body. And so the healthier the body, the healthier, the egg will be. And my hope is that that's kind of sinking in and people are resonating with that and going, yeah, that's right. Like, these are my eggs. So like, how can I make good eggs if I'm not healthy?
It's a really valid point. And I think one to stress to everybody, where again, it goes to this quick fix approach. We just want something to fix our problem.
Yes.
So I'm just going to jump to whatever PRP or peptides or whatever it might be. And if we don't have that baseline foundation built on our side, there's nothing to stack on, right? There's nothing to build with. So I think that's a really valid and very valuable, important point for everyone.
Tell me, I always like to ask, I don't want to say like the craziest, but what's the case that you're most proud of? And whether that's natural conception or IVF, maybe the oldest case. I always like to share the stories that are going to be inspiring because let's face it, so many women are written off.
Yeah.
Whether it's 35 or POI or whatever, you should use donor eggs. And then we as clinicians have these stories that we want to share with with the world. I'd love to hear a couple.
Yeah. The oldest woman that I helped conceive was 51.
Oh, amazing. IVF or natural?
She needed IVF. Yeah,
IVF.
She needed IVF.
In her own eggs or donor?
With her own eggs.
Amazing.
And it was amazing. That was exciting and a lot of fun. And I just think, that's not the norm, but it is something for people to understand that it is possible. Yes. I do work with a lot of 40-year-olds, women over 45. And so I've had a fair amount of success with women at 45, 47. There is one that sticks out for me who was 47 when she was told she needed to do donor egg, and that was the only path. And at 47, I didn't disagree. I thought that was what was going to get her the best results and the fastest results, but that's not what she wanted. She said, I'm comfortable just trying. I'm not interested in donor egg. If it doesn't happen, fine, but I'm willing to try. I don't remember how long she wanted to continue to try for. I said, as long as you're clear about that situation, what your success rates are and what your chances are and what we can do, that's fine. I'm all game. Let's see what we can do.
I kind of actually love those patients because it gives us room to play. There isn't this pressure of like, oh my God, I have to. Cool. Let's see what happens.
Let's see what happens. Exactly. Yeah. And she was able to conceive naturally and deliver at 48.
How was that pregnancy and delivery? I think I get so much. I don't really, get the slack, but people are like, well, is it really healthy to have babies that old, and what happens, and the health of the babies and the health of the pregnancy? I'm like, the patients that I have supported, they have good pregnancies because we support them, and they have good babies because it wasn't a fluke.
She had a good pregnancy, healthy pregnancy. I mean, the people that were more concerned wasn't her, it was her OB,
And that's the OB's fear and the limitation, right?
Right. Yeah. They're just, because they just don't work with that population regularly, so they just have a lot of fear around it. But I wasn't nervous about it. And one thing I hold true to myself is, I'm here, my job is to meet couples where they are and support them with where they are, what they want, and the goals that they want to achieve. Yes. It's not my place. Like with that 47-year-old, yes, I told her, you'd have much better odds and much faster if you had a donor egg. But she consciously chose a different path, and she understood all the ramifications and all that was needed and the odds that were there. So now my job is just to support her wholeheartedly and get her as healthy as possible. So I don't get caught up in those things so much at that point.
Yeah, like who are you to judge her, know?
It's not my place to judge. It's not my life, it's hers. Yep. I just want to make sure that, if she's going to do this, she understands, and she's going to put everything towards it, right? Like, okay, let's just make the most out of this, which she did. And as a result, she was able to achieve her goal. So I'm always proud of those situations. I love all the pregnancy announcements, but those certain ones definitely stick out for me.
Yeah, for sure. And I meant to ask this at the beginning, but like, how did you get into the fertility space? And I always ask because I think it's just such a difficult space to be in. We're walking with patients through some of the most vulnerable time in their life, and there's like no guarantee, but here we are like rolling up our sleeves and going, let me support you. Let's figure this out. I'm curious to hear what made you go into the space.
So the first fertility patient I ever had was while I was in my last year of school and doing clinical rounds. Yeah, I wasn't seeking it out. She just came in and she had polycystic ovarian syndrome with irregular cycles and in 4 months we regulated her cycles and she got pregnant. And when she comes back, she came in and she didn't think she was pregnant. She said to me, we were doing
my cycle is long again.
We were doing so well, and now my cycle's off again. And she was so discouraged. I was like, before we get upset, here's a pregnancy test. Go let's go see what it says. And she came back shocked because it was positive. And that moment when she came back and was just in awe of what happened in such a short period of time, that moment really changed. It was magical for both of us, but for me, I wanted that feeling again and be able to see that again with others. And that's what really turned the tide for me and said, this is really what I want to do. I helped her with her second as well. And I always say, as impactful as I was in her life and helped her have her children, she was much more impactful in my life and in the lives of so many others, because I don't know if I would have actually gone down this path if it wasn't for her. So I'm always grateful for that moment.
Goosebumps.
Yeah.
You know, I think we all have those moments where you just realize, and I think you never know how much each person impacts,
Oh, absolutely.
how much they impact you. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one patient, that's crazy. I have like 3. I had a miscarriage, my first pregnancy, my sister went through, and then that was like, okay, I got to go in here and figure this out.
Yeah.
But that's a beautiful moment. So thank you for sharing that.
We all have those magical moments, and that was definitely it for me.
Yeah. And what about, the heartbreak? And is it the magical moments that allow you to keep going through some of the heartbreak?
Yeah, I was, as you were asking the question, I was actually thinking about that because, in all the YouTube videos and Instagram posts and so forth, and I've thought about this a lot when I've made those posts, is like, I'm always talking about the ones that were successful, right? We're always talking about the wins that we had, but we don't talk about the ones that are struggling or had a miscarriage or those losses or those challenges that come up, and those are real and those happen. And for every pregnancy we have 1 or 2 or whatever number of the opposite that we're also juggling and balancing simultaneously. And one, it's just to be present and be there for them and just hold space. And 2, those successes are the ones that keep us motivated to keep going to try to achieve that same thing with those individuals and others. So it's this back and forth. And you have weeks, I'm sure as I do, where there's a lot of challenges this week, and then you have weeks where there's a lot of successes, and they just balance each other out.
For sure. I think there's times where, I'll turn to my husband and I'm like, the messages that I get in my portal from my patients, it's wild how I have to jump from like, oh my God, this is our first pregnancy. This is the best. We just had our first ultrasound and there was no heartbeat. What do I do? To I'm feeling really defeated. I think this is never going to happen for me. And I'm like, that's literally, I'll have 10 messages.
Yeah.
And it's being able to jump. As we wrap up, is there anything that you want to share with the audience that we haven't yet? A valuable piece of information? What you want everybody to know who might be struggling with infertility?
I think really just staying motivated and staying consistent. For me, one of the biggest lessons that I've learned over the years for couples is it's really not about perfection. It's about progress. If today wasn't great for whatever reason, let's try not to allow that to carry over to tomorrow. And can we just be a little bit better today than we were yesterday? And in what way can you do that today versus yesterday is doable, makes you feel comfortable, and that you feel like that's a win today. I think those are really important things because there's so much going on in the world, in our lives. It's really hard on us across the board. And sometimes it's just about that next step, that one little small win or victory that we can achieve and focusing on that. So, really try not to focus on being perfect all the time. It's not practical, it's not realistic, and that's going to cause a lot of stress. Just how can we just be better and build from day to day? Yeah,
I love that you said that. I think motivation, as I have a couple of clients right now that I'm thinking about, is that motivation starts to wean and you start to go, I'm done, I'm tired, I don't know if I really want to do this. And I think that's very valid, and you need to give yourself space because you are working really hard towards something. Some people essentially didn't have to work for it all, and then that creates a lot of bitterness and jealousy and all that kind of stuff that you're also managing. And then there is the wanting to be the perfectionist, and I almost was like, oh, it's motivation and consistency, because I don't really care about the perfection either. I don't think it's about that at all. But if I can get someone to be consistent, almost drip that motivation instead of dump it as a bucket,
Yeah.
you'll do a lot better. So if you prepare yourself for a long journey, longer than you want it to be, you'll do a lot better and you'll probably get there a lot faster than somebody who prepares themselves like, I just want to do everything perfect and I'll go as fast as I can.
Right.
You tend to burn out and you don't tend to get the same results as someone who has a bit more leeway for themselves.
And in that situation, it's often less is more. I'm going to be
Yes.
good about these small amount of things, and I'm going to build on that versus just trying to do everything all at one time. It's just not manageable and sustainable for an extended period of time, typically.
For anybody. I always referred back to training. You got a 3 weeks on, 1 week off, 6 weeks on, 1 week. So if you're constantly go, 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 you are going to burn out and it's just too much. So that resonates for me as well.
Exactly.
Well, thank you, Dr. Marc, for being here. I super appreciate you. Tell people where they can find you.
Thanks so much for having me. You can find me on my website, marcsklar.com, all the socials, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. My favorite resource is really my YouTube channel, Fertility TV.
Thanks.
I put out a new video every week and really try to make it educational and provide a lot of resources for couples. So that's where I would go first.
I love it. Fertility TV. That's good. How long have you had that channel for?
Probably 14 years-ish.
Nice.
Maybe longer.
That's
I can't
impressive.
remember.
No, I appreciate your media team finding me because when I saw you fill out application, I was like, I'd love to connect with this guy. Thank you for all the work that you're doing and the inspiration and staying in the forefront. I do see a change in the fertility space, some for the worse, but some for the better. And I think it's because of people like yourself pushing this information out and not letting people settle for unexplained infertility or there's nothing you can do and IVF is your only option. So thank you.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.